Hi, I'm John Michael Bailey, and welcome to Wellspring Digital Chats, where we interview marketing experts. We dive into their brains and we swim around a little bit and try to extract some knowledge to share with you. So today we have a Canadian Search Awards judge, a popular keynote speaker, and analytics wrangler, Alan Connect. Alan, if you could take a moment and introduce yourself to these good people.
Hey, everybody. As Mikhail mentioned, I'm Alan, and my company is called Connectology. We've been around since 1998. I started in this world of internet marketing way back in the mid-1990s, where I volunteered on a couple international bills. So I started learning HTML. From there, I started becoming a web builder. And when I built my first website and started trying to market it, I go, anybody coming there? And at that time, there were no good quality tools about measuring anything. You could put little counters on there, and I'll go into some stories later, but I wanted to know what people were coming from. From there, I progressed. I started working for a company. We started working with real analytics tools, and marketing, which led into the world of search engine optimization when the sites that I was building for companies were doing well in the leading search engines of the time. And of course, that led me down the path of becoming an SEO. But no matter what I did, I always wanted to measure the success. What were we doing? Was it working? Was it not only driving eyeballs, but were those eyeballs converting, generating benefit to my clients? And as the world progressed, I got involved in social media marketing. And once again, always with analytics on the end. Right. These days, my company is primarily focused back on our original raison d'etre of analytics heavy. We still, dabble in SEO. We have some very high-end SEO people working for us, and also comes to social media marketing. I don't no longer roll up my sleeves in the world of SEO and social media marketing, but I'm so well versed in it. I know what's going on, and that led me into being a judge for the Search Awards. And as you can tell from my background, I'm a big Humphrey Bogart fan.
Love it. Love it. So when I think of, OG SEOs and just, internet pioneers, I definitely, your name is on that list. And I've been following you for years, reading your stuff. And I'm really excited to talk to you about SEO, specifically about analytics and auditing and data and all that fun stuff. So let's just jump right in. So Carl Hindle, our CEO, was a head judge for the U.S. Search Awards. So I haven't really talked to him much about that. And so I figured, I'm curious about this. What do you judge when you judge search? What's a winning SEO campaign in terms of the U.S. or the Canadian Search Awards criteria?
All right. Well, for last year, I was only a judge for the Canadian Search Awards. This year, I'm going to be on it for a few other countries as well. I didn't want to bite off more than I could chew. So that's a right. Great question, because that was a question I asked them, the people running the awards. What am I supposed to be judging? How am I supposed to be judging? And they said, we're going to send you campaigns based on the categories you say you're interested in. And we're going to leave it to you to review their proposals, review their results, and decide, was that an award-winning effort? And basically, you rate it. There's typically 5 judges that view a specific category, review all the thing, and then we compare notes and and the scores we gave them, and then they add up the total scores unless we want to change it. Right. And then one with the highest overall score becomes the winner. And of course, when we have our discussion, sometimes, oh, I missed that, or oh, that's an interesting point. So when it came down to me, as I said, even when I started building websites back in the early 90s and through the 2000s and right up into 2021, I'm involved with companies and their websites and working with their back-end developers, and their marketing teams and their SEOs and their whatever. I always look at the numbers first and foremost. Mm. Yes, there were a couple campaigns I saw where they had wonderful visuals. Right. Okay. Maybe I liked it, but did that resonate with your target audience? Because I might not be your target audience. And that's, I think, one of the things some judges say, oh, I love their ad. That was so creative. And I go, yeah, but look at the numbers. Oh, yeah. So that's part of where I look at. So I look at, in their proposals, what were their key performance indicators, their KPIs? How are they going to measure their success? Mm-hmm. It's if all they cared about was driving people to their website because they just wanted to create brand awareness, that might be a reliable and valid goal. But then you better tell me, how many eyeballs are you getting today? And how many eyeballs did the campaign generate? What happened after the end of the campaign? Did it drop off immediately? Was it sticky? Was it so forth? And in other ones, it was, well, we wanted to drive lead generations. Others, it was, we wanted to drive sales. So we really need to look at what their KPIs were. Were they objective? Were they subjective? How were they actually measuring it? So were they using Google Analytics? Were they using Adobe Analytics? Were they using some other analytics tool? Right. Were they merely counting revenue? That while we ran our ad, our revenue was up 25%. Our goal was to have a 10% lift in revenue. Wow, fantastic, right? And that's the type of thing that I look for both in their proposal, and their proposal better say what their goals were, not just what they were going to measure, but what they expected to achieve. And then I looked at their results.
I think
I gave them my votes.
Yeah. I think that's kind of universal. I think most companies should be focused on the KPIs and not, the vanity metrics, which really leads me perfectly into my next question, which I appreciate. You wrote an article for Digital Summit. I love Digital Summit. I've spoken at some of their events about waving bye-bye to page views as a KPI. So can you talk a little bit about that and other metrics that are maybe losing importance yet still being focused on by marketers? What these vanity metrics or these unimportant metrics that these marketers still are obsessed with for some reason. Can you speak to that a bit?
Oh, I'd love to. This is one of my favorite topics, believe it or not, because I've been talking about this subject for over 20 years now.
Yeah.
And about 11 years ago, I put out a book called The Last Original Idea, and I put in a piece in analytics about this. So I'm going to take you back. The year was, trying to remember, about 1997. I was working for a software startup. I was a low teen of their employees. And at some point before I left, they were up to like employee number 50 or something like that. That was in the span of less than a year. And I remember building their website and had the title Webmaster, master, jack of all trades, included analytics. And the boss came to me with a press release from a leading competitor talking about their performance of their website, which talked about how many hits their website was getting. All right. And I also remember at the same time, YouTube went public talking about how many hundreds of thousands of hits they were getting. They never even talked about page views. They were talking hits because it was the easiest number back then to get from your analytics. You used to have what's called an access log. You used to count the number of lines in an access log. The president of the company, I would say, well, he wouldn't listen to a word. He says, I don't care. I know the company's bigger than us. I don't expect you to make those numbers. I pulled up my printed reports that I ran once a week on which included a hits number, but I want to plan by the end of the week, how you're going to raise our hits, 30, 40% within the next 3 months. All right, whatever. And whenever I had my meeting, I think he gave me a week or 2 weeks to prepare the report. I came with my latest analytics printout and I said, oh yeah, so what's your plan? I said, well, we're already up 20% in hits. Here's the latest report. He goes, wow, how'd you do that? And I said, well, the website, you notice that there were now 2 new icons appearing, one on the left, one on the right? He goes, yeah, I really like that. Well, each one of those is a hit. And we added 2 graphical elements to the 10 we had on the page. So now we have 20% more elements per page. So we have 20. And he goes, hold on, sit down. What are hits? And then he said, what should we be measuring?
That's awesome.
And at which point I said, here's what we should be measuring. We also have a fill out our questionnaire survey, and because we promised people you would get a gift if you filled it in. And everybody who filled it in, we mailed out something. Now, depending on their answers, determine the quality of their product. If they were a likely buyer of this very expensive software, they got a really nice gift mailed out to them. If you were like, yeah, I got a free one, and no, you're not the decision maker. You're not
right.
You don't meet her. You got a gift, but you might have gotten a bookmark and a pen. And the good people got a set of coffee mugs type of thing. But we started understanding that it was more important to evaluate what people were doing while they were on the site. And he understood that what could we do to drive more lead generation? And that is part of it. And that's part of where page views come in. There are clients where page view is a meaningful statistic. If you're a CNET, who I used to write for back in the late 90s and early 2000s, and they make their revenue by ad displays, so much per 100 ads or per 1,000 ads, that's what you're bidding on or paying for, then yes, page views is a meaningful statistic because it's directly related to your revenue.
Right.
But if you're a bank, who cares about page views? If you're doing click on my ad and get our free, report on X because you're just trying to drive leads because they have to give you their first name, last name, and email address, I couldn't care how many page views. I care how effective that ad is in filling in that form. I also then want to know what's the conversion rate of people who actually filled it in.
Right.
And so it's more than one is, you could be running A/B tests and ads. Great. This ad drove, and I just gave this example yesterday to a client. You have running two ads, both, one drove 100 people to your site for the X dollars, and one only drove 50, one generated 100 leads, one generated 50 leads. All right, wow, we're going to run that ad that gave us 100 leads for the money, for the spend. But of those 100 leads, you only have a 1% conversion rate.
Right.
For the 50 leads, you have a 4% conversion rate, which means for the same money, you get 2 leads versus one conversion. So which ad should you be running? And this is where companies mess up big time. They are not looking at the proper key performance indicators or multiple key performance indicators. Those KPIs are critical, and we couldn't care less about page views. One of my clients, they do a lot of SEO efforts because it's all about literally page views because they don't sell anything. They are a medical information site, and it's what do you consider a successful visit? Well, we are really marketing for our clients content about their pharmaceutical products, about the treatments available for it, because obviously in the article about the treatment, they mention the brand name of a particular medication, whatever it is. Great. So it's how many people made it to a certain distance down your page. Yeah. So page views are meaningless because you're looking at one of their spends that are on SEO. So how many people came from SEO and how far did they read? If they look at the first page, headline and leave, that wasn't a successful SEO effort. And so we started setting up scroll tracking. And then we have a goal of, let's say it was, made it at least 70% way down the page. That is a success matrix. If they only read the first paragraph and most of the stuff is fairly long, it's useless.
Right.
And that is part of understanding, and marketers have to understand that. It's not always just about driving eyeballs. It's by driving quality eyeballs and quality engagements and defining the KPIs that define those qualities.
So to flip it a little bit, your company offers auditing services at Connectology, your company.
Yes.
So when you're doing these audits and you're looking at the coding side and the website side of things, what are some of the usual suspects you're seeing during these audits? In other words, what are some common mistakes businesses make with their websites from an SEO standpoint or even a KPI standpoint in so far as building it out?
Well, I would say at least 9 out of 10 audits that we've done, all number one issue that these companies have is they don't have a measurement plan. And what I mean by a measurement plan is they have to start with the corporation's vision statement or objectives. They need their marketing department's objectives. What is our goal? Why are we a marketing department? What is our goal? And then from that, how would we measure success in meeting our goals? And not the marketing department's goals have to support the corporate goals. It's all built, and if you want to think of it, an inverse pyramid. And that goes into defining the key performance indicators. And then how do we extract that from a user engagement in our website? And that is where usual break starts with. And if they don't have that, I can go and audit things and I can tell them, I do almost 200 over 100 items that we check when we do our audits. Yeah, this was good, this was good, this is bad, but it doesn't support what you're trying to measure.
Right.
And so that becomes the first point. Then in certain products, so you need your goals and make sure that your analytics are tied into your website. And that becomes part of the problem. And that's where you end up working with the developers to make sure that, a common thing that has happened, about 5-6 years ago essentially with the expansion of WordPress and how forms were done, there are no more thank you pages. At one time, you used to measure thank you pages.
Right.
Now, everything's done in a data layer. You get this nice form, you fill it in, you get thank you. And out of the box analytics tool doesn't pick up that thank you because the page hasn't changed. What do you need to do in your analytics tool or in your web development tool that would set a trigger that says that form was filled in, if that's important?
Mm-hmm.
And that is how we start doing it. Then another common and so without that, you can't check all that. And that leads, I mentioned already, is out of the box analytics. I don't care if you're using Adobe, Google, any other analytics tool. If you're just sticking it on your site, you're wasting your effort.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I've gone in and they just have the default Google, I'll use Google Analytics because most organizations, the most widely installed one, have all website data. It has no filters, nothing. Well, we put it in, we put this little snippet of code had our developers put this on every page and we're getting data. Great. But what about your internal traffic? Are people in your office using your website? They're using your website differently than your external customers. Oh, so things of that nature become, so now you say, and so that becomes another mistake is they haven't set up different views of their data. So obviously having a raw all data view is fantastic. It helps you dig down and do different things. But you should probably, at minimum, you want to separate out external versus internal users. And you probably want a fourth view for your developers / testing. So that doesn't even gets extracted out. So as your developers are putting in things that you're asking for, you can evaluate whether they're working with. So those are really some of the most common ones. And I like to always warn people about this one because I've caught this probably about 3 out of 5 times, maybe not a little less. It all depends on things. Is personally identifiable information, PII. The amount of developers who don't think about this and use things like email addresses as parameters when people log in and transfer that over and gets picked up by your analytics. Under both Canadian, US law, definitely under EU legislation, you cannot store personally identifiable information on a third-party server without express written permission of the user. Google Analytics is a third-party storage. And the amount of times I've caught where an email address, I've seen phone numbers being captured and stored, it is mind-boggling, and that is something I warn everybody. The easiest thing is go to your analytics tool where it has all those lovely URLs, type in an @ symbol and see what comes in. Type in leading area code, see if that's showing up. Even type in somebody's name, like pick one of the most common names. Type in a David, type in a Bob, whatever, a Sarah, whatever it is. You will find sometimes, and it's mind-boggling what's being stored in that, and you're breaking the law, and you got to stop it right away, either through filters or get your IT people. And the sad part is you can never get your data erased out of Google. You can set it so it'll eventually be purged, but that's about the level you are at. So you do have exposure.
So to kind of continue on with that, so you're working in analytics quite a bit. You're training people on analytics. What are some of your biggest pet peeves? You spoke about storing data. You spoke about not tracking things properly in analytics. What are some of your other biggest pet peeves, both from a Google Analytics side of things and from a customer usage of it side of things? This is a safe space. I promise you can.
It's a safe space. I appreciate the safe space. Yeah. As I was mentioning, the pet peeve is where, and I see this primarily in large organizations, it doesn't exist in small ones, where the IT people and the analytics people don't really talk together. So there's
Right.
not proper QA being done on analytics. And you got to get the QA people involved, because I did some work with banks and they have a department just doing quality assurance testing. But they didn't do any quality assurance testing when some new part of the website is being released. They didn't check the analytics.
Right.
And the developer says, oh, well, you figure it out. It's not my problem. It is your problem. If the bank can't, or the company can't properly report on successful marketing of the website, everybody's job's at stake.
Right.
And that is part of it. And I've seen all sorts of issues with it. The best companies are where everybody talks and everybody understands, and even sharing the impact. As a talk with developers, goes, I don't understand why you want this, because nobody ever explained it to them.
Right.
I log into the analytics. I show, by the way, this is what we're trying to achieve, and we need. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Okay, I'll have it for you by the end of the day. It's little things like that. Is everybody is trying to protect their turf, as opposed to the turf being the company.
Right.
And that is, a personal pet peeve. As the consultant, I come in. Yes, they're paying me usually a lot more than the people on the floor, and that does garner some respect, and I can get some things done. The other piece is, and this drives me nuts, and this is at the executive level, and I've worked at a few places where the executives caught on after I talked to them, and they stopped accepting, here's a printout, or whatever, emailing a PDF of our marketing department's performance last month. And no, train your executives to dig into the data.
Yeah.
They're only looking for a soundbite. They're looking for the numbers, but just don't spoon feed it to them. Educate them in what it means. It's an old marketing thing. The best customer is an educated customer.
Yep.
The best boss understands what you're doing. They can intelligently do this, and they can evaluate your external marketing partners. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves. And I get this all the time with usually mid-sized clients, where they're working with a third-party marketing company who's running their AdWords, is doing their social media. Oh, they're running our analytics for us. They're doing that at no charge. And look at the lovely reports they send us. And I look at those reports, they go, this is BS.
Right.
They're bragging about how many eyeballs they drove to your site. Once again, it goes back to that third party, that data saying, were they quality eyeballs? And one of the most offensive things I ever found from an audit, and I was brought in because somebody was suspicious of this marketing company who kept sending in reports, would not give me access to their analytics. Tell us what report you want, we'll let you go. No, I want to be able to explore the data. No, we can't do that. I need to go in and see the admin side of your system. No, fortunately, I managed to get them to send me some information, and I reverse engineered it. They were sending in all sorts of lovely data about how effective the marketing was. But when I asked for certain reports, which gave me a geographical breakdown, I realized most of the traffic was coming from one city. So then I asked for a certain report at which time you could used to be able to get the IP addresses, and they were reluctant. And so I had, can you just send me these files from your server? And obviously people had no idea. All the traffic was coming from one specific IP address. I did a reverse engineer of that IP address, found out it was a company in the same building as they were located. And guess what? It was a subdivision of that bigger company. And they were driving all these eyeball clicks. And then when I showed it to the client, oh no, we have to go every day and test every ad that the links are still working. I said, A, that should have been filtered out.
Right.
And B, if you set up the ads properly and the site hasn't changed, the links in the ads aren't going to change.
Right.
And all of a sudden, about 80% of the traffic they were reporting was bogus.
Oh, man.
And that's part of where, if you are hiring third-party agencies, now I'm not casting all agencies in that mess. That is an oddity. Most have been caught now, and most have cleaned up their acts.
Right.
I go back with years of experience. Do not give them 100% control of your analytics. You need to maintain it and ensure that, and this is one thing at my company, when we set up analytics for people, we make sure that they have full admin access, at least somebody in their organization. And we clearly state that they are owners of the data. I've seen too many marketing agencies, if you're talking Google Analytics, I'll use their terminology, they create a property for your company. And then they say, well, no, they didn't write that they will ever release it. So if you change agencies, you lose your data.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And that is a pet peeve. Everybody, please go look at your agreements with your agencies. If you don't have explicit ownership of the data, get it in there now. Even if it's a great agency, I'm sorry, there are lovely, great agencies who do things like that. If they're not trying to be mean, that's just how they operate, and make sure there is a way to transfer the data to you after the fact. So please go out there and make sure that you get clear ownership, that the data is your data, not the ad agencies.
Amen. Amen. So my final question is I want to dive into tools. We live in a world of tools, dashboards, software, apps, blah, blah, blah. So, with all these tools, can you talk about the intersection of, marketing technology and analytics, is in terms of using data to better understand what's going on and how to deliver better marketing to customers?
All right. Well, I'm going to use the old adage, the most important tool out there is the one between your ears.
There you go.
So obviously use your brain first and foremost. Tools, I always use the example of carpentry or something like that. I can give you a saw, I can give you some nails, and I can give you a hammer. It doesn't make you a carpenter.
Right.
And that is the thing. People are going out and spending a lot of money on tools or getting all these free tools, and then they implement them, but they don't know how to use them. So called part of pet peeve, part of this answer is get your training on how to use these tools effectively. Mm-hmm. So that's the first and foremost. And when it comes to SEO tools, yes, SEMrush, Authority Labs, they're all great. They're all great tools. I'm not going to pick one over the other. You got to find the one that fits your needs. And there are other ones out there. Right now I'm drawing a blank on some of the names, but there's great tools out there, including analytics. But don't invest in analytics unless you're going to use the data that comes out of them.
Right.
But one of the problems that we're now running into, and this is where the intersection, and you need to start preparing for this, is most of these tools that are tracking users, whether they're coming from, whether you're using, you're running Facebook ads and you're looking at your Facebook analytics, which you can't export to anything else because that's proprietary to Facebook.
Right.
You're running your Google AdWords. Okay, at least you can easily bring that into Google Analytics. But if you're running Adobe, it doesn't come in the same way. You need to start realizing most of those tools use persistent cookies. And if you don't know what cookies, search my name in cookies. You'll find articles I wrote 20 years ago about this problem.
Sure. Yeah.
But the EU, as a few years ago, you have to now ask users, hey, we use cookies. Do we have your permission? Yes or no? And if they say no, you either can't set the cookies or you have to kick them off your site. And as well, Apple has now put out things with their Safari and their iOS in more security settings on blocking cookies, impacting if you're selling apps on the iStore, how long you can track things back. So there's an assault on the use of cookies. I'm not going to get into whether that's good or bad. It's just the reality of it is. But as these cookies get blocked by more and more people from your analytics tool, the quality of your data drops. If there's no cookie, there's no data. And you do not really get a good sampling. Yes, you lose 1%, 2%, nobody cares. But I've seen some clients where it is getting, they're heavy targeted at iPhone users, and I'm seeing a really good steady drop in use of cookies because we can see the behavior through other ways of what's going on through the app and on the site, but we don't get the user counts. We're not getting, we can look at other log files and see what's going on. So you need to start getting yourself ready on that impact for your data. And how is that going to affect your marketing efforts? I know Apple put out an email last week about what their changes are coming through. And the one thing that I would suggest to all these people, and this is really going to be impacting all the remarketing or retargeting cookies that people are setting, this is where it's going to really first hit you.
Yep.
That people will not, yes, you can get your user behavior stuff different ways off your website, but if you can't retarget, what is that impact going to be on you and things of that nature?
It's huge.
It's huge. So one of the things, if you're running a website or app and you're using analytics, that requires user login. So you have, come in here, register to use our site. Now, it's not appropriate for, most sites. It's probably 20% of sites have some require, user registration process. Even many newspapers now, and I'm getting more and more convinced, it's not just that they want to know who you are, but they want you to log in to be able to read their content, even if they're going to be giving away for free. This is the reason that they are moving this way for the online newspapers.
Yep.
You can start tracking people by a generic user ID. So it can't have any, personally identifiable information in the user ID. It can be number 1234 ABC.
Yep.
But you can start tracking those users by that instead of by cookies, which brings up the quality of data better. It allows you also then to do cross-device tracking, how many people are using their phone and a tablet and a desktop, where are things going? So understanding that is sort of where the future is going to be, and start preparing for that. And if it will not work in your business model, well, you got to prepare yourself for it as well. And this is where the intersection is starting to go. And people don't understand why it's called GA4. Google Analytics 4 now is in beta. You have to remember there was the original Google Analytics. Then there was a second version, more or less. Then they came to what's called Google Universal, which is really Google Analytics 3. And then there's the paid version, Google 360. Now there's the beta of Google Analytics 4. It works entirely different than every preceding version of Google Analytics. And it's being built on the concept that you're going to have a big data warehouse in the background. And they even give you an option to have a free Google BigQuery account, as long as your site isn't generating too much traffic. And that's where things are heading. And once again, this goes back to not measuring page views. It's not about page views. It's about trackable events, what people are doing on your site, not what pages they're reading. Yes, that's important if you're a content site. What's our most read content? What type of content do people like the most? But it's understanding what people are doing and how they're interacting with the site. It allows you to start stitching data together with using data warehouses and and SQL queries. And you got to start getting your brain around it. I've heard reports that GA4 is going to replace Google Analytics, by the end of 2021. I don't buy it. I think it's going to probably be at least another year and a half, if not a little bit longer. But start getting your head around it, get yourself understanding about data warehouses. Do you want to use the free one? Do you want to look for third-party ones? What are you going to be doing? How are you going to do it? Start playing with the beta version, getting the data captured, and start understanding where this is going to take you and how is it going to interact with these third-party marketing tools. Because a lot of the third-party marketing tools ask for access to your Google Analytics. So talk to them. Are they aware? Do they already have a plugin for GA4 and so forth? And most of them do not, but they're working on it.
Right.
And they'll probably be tying into BigQuery or whatever your data warehouse is to pull the data that they're going to need to help analyze your traffic.
We're in crazy time. We could call these the cookie wars. We're in the cookie wars, like the Clone Wars and Star Wars.
The Clone War. Well, the irony is this is going back. I'm telling you, I've been in this industry for so long. I remember when cookies first came out back in the late 1990s.
Yeah.
And there was the first uproar about them.
Yep.
And I had to write an article to explain cookies and I was writing for Computer World at the time, why cookies aren't a bad thing per se. They're a benign bit of code. It should be a unique, randomly generated number. The problem back in the late 90s were, and I'll pick on developers, you have to always pick on somebody, were lazy. There were e-commerce sites that used to click a button. Oh yeah, remember my name, my address, my credit card number. Great. They used to store it on your computer in
I remember
cookies.
that. Yep.
And okay.
Idiots.
People didn't understand that. Well, people who were not on the internet back in the mid 90s, late 90s, even into the early 2000s, didn't realize most people didn't have internet connections at home.
Yeah.
They might have had them at work, but many people were going to libraries and these things called internet cafes. And one of the big things that crooks were doing, they were going to internet cafes, sticking in a floppy disk drive, not even a US, thumb drive at the time,
right,
and downloading everything in the cookie directory.
Crazy.
And stealing credit card and personally identifiable information that way. And of course, that's what first created the big uproar over cookies. And that part of what led to the EU decisions. The other part is people are going, just because I was on Amazon yesterday and I happened to look at, I don't know, I'll pick one I was just looking at, a UPS.
Right. Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm on Facebook and I get all these ads for uninterrupted power supplies. How does Facebook know? Facebook doesn't know. Facebook ads know because they have cookies and they're working with Amazon is running ads and they're saying, hey, if they have this cookie, and we know that your email address from Amazon, so we're going to retarget this. That's still going to happen because they're tracking you by your email address.
Right.
So as long as your email address is the same one on Amazon as on Facebook, they know who you are.
That's where I think the little guys are going to lose out in a lot of this is they don't have that kind of access. So I think your point about, gearing up for that is smart. Start figuring that out. That's your future.
That's the future. It's right now we've all been relying on putting our Facebook pixels or AdWord pixels and our SMART goals within Google.
Yeah.
Great. But that in 2 years is not going to be viable anymore.
Yep.
So how are you going, if that's part of your marketing strategy today, and I don't care if if the mom and pop businesses, they're getting slaughtered all the time because of changes in technology.
Yep.
But you could be a mid-size, you could be a big business. If that is, as a marketing department, if that's what you're relying on, get ready for a wake-up call. So start looking into it, start talking to your IT, start talking to the senior executives, and get a plan in place for embracing the future of analytics, of marketing. This goes back, and I'm not that old, but Nielsen ratings used to start with understanding what people are listening to on the radio.
Yeah.
And initially, they used to have a little ticker in people's radios that signed up. And they would check what time you turned it on, what station you were tuned to, and they would come by and pick up things. Then they sent out paper logs for people to record what they were watching. Then they put TV top boxes. Great. And people were spending, Nielsen ratings drove advertising revenue for TV shows.
Yeah.
Because they assumed that small sample was quality data. And sometimes they were way off. Because how much did they spend on Super Bowl ads? Because, you have all these marketers. And we know over the years, people spend a fortune on advertising for the Super Bowl, which, I don't know when you'll be watching this, but right now it's in less than 2 weeks. And then, companies sit there, and some companies, their servers would die because they were promoting a website. They weren't ready. Other ones got nothing.
Yeah. Millions of dollars. Nothing.
Millions of dollars. I always think of pets.com way back when. They had the puppet. They were all geared up for it. And everyone went, well, how much am I going to pay? Forget these guys. Yep. And the company spent all their marketing but on the 30-second ad that did nothing. But all the, ratings and the things. And so understand, do your marketing smartly. Look at your tools. If you're investing in SEO, it's an investment. It's not going to give you, an instant payback. Those days are long gone.
Yep.
But invest. Understand what users are looking for. Use your analytics accordingly. And then make sure you're prepared. If you're also having to spend money to drive traffic to your site for conversions, for revenue generations, what are the tools you're currently using? And start looking at how things are going to change and get ready for that. And that's really my message to everybody.
Which is a great message and a great place to leave it with you, Alan. I really appreciate you coming on. Tons of great information here. And just thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So stay safe, everybody. We are out.
All right. Fantastic.